There's a distance between us. It's getting hard to reach out. Haven't seen you in seasons, but all I hear is your voice. I know my limits, you can break me down, but I'll stay till the finish line. And I've been counting minutes for quite some time now, just to see you again. And I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, see you again. Been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again. We got millions of reasons to let it all go. Hope we're not too broken. I know I'm not always strong, and I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, see you again. Been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, John J. II, here with Branden Smith, our sports guru, college sports, college football. Not too many people know as much as this guy. Smitty, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, that's I'm doing great. Thank you for the intro. I appreciate that. I do my best.
Hey, you did a hell of a job, and we got a hell of a slate for you guys here tonight. Going to go through a couple games, but there's a topic in here that I'm really excited to get into, and I won't spoil you, but we're going to talk about it here later following the previews for the games upcoming this week. And there's a lot of good games on the slate, and kind of a story of all these games is how small the spreads are getting. And we mentioned it earlier in the week on the Monday GCP. Basically how the rubber is meeting the pavement. And that's kind of going to be the course of action going forward throughout the rest of the season. We're going to see that going forward all the way to the postseason from now up until the end. It's going to be just rubber meeting the pavement constantly. So we're excited to see that. And I'm excited for it. This is the best part of college football. And this is the time of year you really can't afford to miss out on the opportunities out there. So picking the right sides, jumping on the right bandwagons at this point in the season. You kind of see where teams are at. You see where they're going, and you see where they're going to wind up. So there's a good picture that's already been painted, and especially with the last season of the 4-team college football playoff format, we're going to see it even more, and teams have a lot to play for, especially this chip, the chip that happens this season. they're playing for a lot. You're playing for basically the last chip in the 4-team format. So there's something to play for there. And these teams that are undefeated, they got to keep on the right track to avoid missing out on those top 4 spots, especially with super conferences aligning. We're already seeing it take action. We're going to see it even more take action. Basically, the dynamics is going to change completely going into 2024. We've talked about that, preached that constantly here on this show. So let's just jump right into the first game of the week. Oregon versus Washington. Washington -3. Smitty, what are your first takes on this game, and what are we expecting to see here?
So like you mentioned, a lot of tight spreads this weekend. A lot of really good games we played. A lot of questions coming from Vegas, unsure of what side's going to come out with victory. And we're starting off with probably the best game of the day in the Pac-12. There, well, the soon not to be any more Pac-12, but both teams, Washington and Oregon, are coming off a bye, so both teams are rested, eager to play, study their notes, watch their film. They're eating their Wheaties, drinking their protein shakes, and all that good stuff. So it's gonna be a really, really good game. You got offense, total team offense 1 and 2, Washington being number 1 and Oregon being number 2. The Huskies are at home. We're going from Eugene up to Washington there, a little north for the Oregon Ducks, so not too long of a drive. But this game's gonna be a really good one. I mean, you're gonna have 2 explosive offenses. You have Michael Penix Jr., who is the front runner for Heisman right now, and then you have the Ducks and Bo Nix, and they're explosive and talented offense as well. And the one thing I see with this game is not only do we have great offenses on both sides, but I do believe the Ducks have a bit of a better defense statistically. They rank, what is it here? We got the Ducks total defense 6th in the nation overall, compared to Washington being 62nd. Passing defense 5th in the nation for the Ducks, compared to the Huskies being 91st. And we know both teams love to pass the ball. The Huskies don't run the ball as much. They have 102 yards on average rushing. They really like to sling the ball around the field, compared to the Ducks, who are 8th rushing. So the Oregon Ducks are a much more balanced team here, and their defense has really showed up and limited the opposing teams from putting yards on them, unlike the Washington Huskies. So in this game, John, I just see it's gonna be a great game, right? We got 2 teams rested, great offenses, right? It's gonna be fireworks all game. But I'm leaning on the Ducks here with their defense. I want to see that team, you know, mirror the statistics that they produced so far this season, compete with the Huskies offensively, but get those crucial stops throughout the game to lead to an away win is what I'm trying to get here. An away win for the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, as far as geography is concerned, you're playing a very similar environment than compared to at home. That Oregon Ducks. It's just a short little jaunt, to Washington, and you're looking at this game, and you really can't split these 2 teams apart much more than what. It's basically a question of what's going to tip the balance. Is it the defense? Is it going to be the battle of the quarterbacks? Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. There's a lot of variables here. Both teams sitting atop the Pac-12. Both teams undefeated. And this is where the nose meets the grindstone. Especially, this is a paramount picture of what that means, and displayed perfectly here. So we're expecting to see that with the Oregon Ducks and the Washington Huskies. This is going to be a hell of a game. You mentioned the defense. Does that decide the game? They're both showing fireworks on offense. Why does Washington take the L here, I guess, in your mind?
I mean, honestly, in this game, John, it comes down to which offense stays steadily producing, which offense comes out more, crisp. And for the Ducks, it's controlling the environment, controlling themselves, controlling the penalties, of course, limiting turnovers for both sides. But, for me personally, I just am looking at the defense for the Ducks. They're very, very talented, especially with the passing game. I mean, their passing defense, they're fifth in the nation in passing defense, and that is the bread and butter of the Huskies. I mean, they have 4 very, very great wide receivers. Penix is a tremendous quarterback. And this game really could go either way. The Huskies could very easily win this game as well. But I'm just going to lean on the team that has the defensive minded. They're a run pass team. The Ducks are more able to control time of possession with getting their running game going right. They got this Bruce Irving kid. They call him Buck or something like that. Bucky Irving, and he's a tremendous back. They also have a second back who's got some size on him here. Maybe I'm misspeaking on that one, but either way, it's going to be a really, really great game offensively. I'm just going to lean with the defense. I just got to go with the defense here. The Ducks are a top 5 team, and this is one of those games where you have to win. And to win a game like this, you got to get defensive stops. So I'm leading with the Ducks here on their defense, and Bo Nix. Hopefully, he can, not return to an old form of Bo Nix. He doesn't be throwing interceptions and lousy plays. I hope the play calling for Oregon is a steady run pass option, so they get the run going, and they got openings for the pass, and just being tough up front with that defense.
Yeah, this reminds me of the Monday GCP where I mentioned the biggest detriment to teams that might have should have won. And what was the difference between them winning or losing that game? And a lot of times it came down to multiple interceptions thrown by their quarterback and turnovers committed by their offense. I think that might be the tipping of the balance here. Which team has the least amount of turnovers? Which team has the least amount of 3 and outs? Which team can maintain possession and keep that time of possession at the highest level while also converting those into scores, whether they're touchdowns or field goals? Just getting the ball down the field and putting points on the board. So limiting mistakes, limiting turnovers, getting points on the board, limiting 3 and outs, and letting your defense rest, because the defense is going to play a major role in this game.
Yes.
So we're going to be looking forward to that.
Another thing I like about this game, of course, and environments are key in deciding, for potential away team going into a home environment and coming away with the W. And this game's at 3:30 our time. So they're 3 hours behind us. This is a 12:30 game over there in Washington, right? So this isn't a 7:30. The lights are on. The environment's not as hyped up as it might be. We're just now we got an early breakfast. It's a 12:30 game over there, all right? It's not a 7:30 game. We know how environments change across the landscape of college football. It's still going to be a great crowd. Washington's still going to be there, loud. It's going to be a loud environment. But I feel a little bit more comfortable with the time frame in this game.
You'd think this would have been a great candidate for a night game under the lights, don't you think?
Absolutely. I'm surprised they didn't move this game to a different time zone or time.
Yeah.
Stamp.
I mean, I guess good for us, because we'd be looking at a midnight start likely. Not really, but probably a 10 o'clock start if it was a night game. Nevertheless, though, I think you're right. When you mention hostility of environment, definitely under the lights, playing under the lights at a night game is a far more hostile environment than during the day or any time when the sun is up, just because you don't have that extra edge. You don't have the creepy crawlies coming out of the dark. You don't have the ghouls and goblins lurking behind the trees in the dark like you do have during the day. So it's spooky season, but it's not as spooky as it could be because we're dealing with a day game. So that definitely hostility of environment goes down, and that definitely, I think, plays to the Oregon Ducks' benefit there too. So going to be a good game no matter how you slice it. It's one of those games you just got to watch it and appreciate the football.
Can't wait to watch it. Can't wait to watch it.
100%. Let's move on. USC Notre Dame. Notre Dame is favored by 3 points coming off a loss against Louisville. How are we feeling about this Notre Dame team? I know I have my words. I have my perspectives, my subjective ideologies going towards the USC Trojans. But let's talk about Notre Dame first. What is the state of this team? Obviously, Marcus Freeman came in there and really tried to revamp things, and he's coming up and playing a role maybe he's not fully comfortable in, maybe he hasn't fully grown into yet. Sam Hartman, similar position. A lot of players can even be put in that same category. Is this Notre Dame team the real deal, and do they have the capability to beat an undefeated USC team at home? Notre Dame's at home, by the way.
Yes, yeah. Notre Dame's at home. They're in Indiana, or at their home state there of Indiana. The state of Notre Dame, it's got to be a immense disappointment. I mean, not being in a conference, not having the ability to have a conference championship game to save your behinds and have the possibility, if everything panned out with losses across the board with other teams. But This Notre Dame team, I mean, they are what they are. Sam Hartman, a graduate transfer. When you needed him the most, and you needed him not to be what he was at Wake Forest, he wasn't there. He wasn't the guy for Notre Dame. I mean, he goes and turns the ball over 3 times, and I mean, granted, look, the Louisville team, very good team, and they showed up, crowd showed up, but there's got to be just immense disappointment because with 2 losses on your record there and not having a conference championship game again to save your butts, it's pretty much see you later. You know, you're not making this. And for that whole Notre Dame team, there's a lot of seniors and graduate transfers or graduates, uh, or grads, I should say, on that team. A very old team, very old, an older team with guys that this is going to be their final season playing if they don't have another year, of course. So going to this game, and this is college football. These kids, they're not just playing for everyone. When you strap on the helmet and you wake up and you're in your college dorm and you're going to play college ball, the ultimate goal is getting to the Final Four, getting to the championship, winning it all, of course, right? And now that they don't really have the opportunity, it's pretty much out the window. I mean, they still have an opportunity for themselves to play, to showcase their skills and their possibilities for the future in the NFL and whatnot, right? So these guys can go out there. They're still going to give it their best, give it 100%. But you got a USC team who has been pretty questionable these last couple of games against Colorado, letting them crawl back. Even though Colorado's got a solid offense there with Shadur and whatnot in the home environment, and then fighting against Arizona, right? So you got a lot of skeptical thought when it comes to this USC team, especially on their defense side, right? And when you're matching them against a Notre Dame team who is defensively tough up front. They statistically they stop the run, they stop the pass, right? But again, it's like okay, and what I'm seeing across the board in these early weeks, week 5, week 6, you're getting these teams who have really great stats. Their statistical stats, their yards not allowed, their run defense, and all this stuff. They're tremendous, right? But they get blustered by these early weeks when they play nobody, when they play these teams that just aren't even in their league, right? So what you're seeing on this Notre Dame team and what I'm seeing is their secondary, the suspect secondary. They have a tremendous defensive line, but we're talking about playing Caleb Williams, Mario Williams, Taj Washington, Brendan Rice. You got a solid running back. You got Lincoln Riley, right? You got a team that's been there, done that. Heisman Trophy winner last season. I don't trust Notre Dame. I don't trust Marcus Freeman. Right, he's year number 2 at Notre Dame. We've already seen, in Ohio State that this lack of coaching that cost them ultimately the win. And if coaching mistakes in that game, right, that lost them the game. So if Marcus Freeman isn't an idiot and doesn't in the play calling in the first half, if they would just run the ball and all this and that, right, they only have one loss. They still have an opportunity. They went to Louisville, right? They went to Louisville, played a tough environment, a Louisville team that's a solid team defensively and can run the ball. Got great athletes on the wide receivers, but that's an extra loss that they shouldn't have, right? They should not have 2 losses in my mind. And now I got USC. USC, dude, fourth in the country offensively, right? I already told you about the weapons, and I just don't trust the secondary. I think that the USC team, I think they've been playing a little bit of possum. They probably overlooked Arizona freshman quarterback, and they almost bit them in the rear end, right? But fortunately, again, that offense with what it is came back from 17 down. The defense stood up. But all in all, it's gonna be a tough game. We're in North Bend. It's a 7:30 game. Notre Dame's going to show up. It's not the loudest stadium, right, to play in. But I got USC in this game. I just don't trust. I don't trust Notre Dame. They might fight. They might score some points on a lackluster defense with USC. But at the end of the day, I just think that USC has too many weapons offensively. Caleb Williams is, number 1 draft pick for a reason, and I just like their experience. And I don't trust the secondary of Notre Dame.
Yeah, you look at stature, you look at reps, you look at experience at a higher level. You got to tip your cap to USC and got to give them the nod there. And I have my choice words for USC. I'll save those. I'll spare the audience those words tonight. But you look at it from a broad perspective, like we do everything else, bird's eye view. And this USC team, they've just proven themselves to, even if they do get down, yes, they might get lazy. Yes, and I think both of these teams have gotten lazy and complacent. It bit Notre Dame in the ass at least once, getting maybe not complacent against Ohio State, but bad coaching decisions, bad play calls attributed to that loss, and a bad defensive stand right there at the end of the game against Ohio State. So you should be sitting at 6-1 if you're Notre Dame, and still having a fighting chance. No pun intended. But that then again adds to the detriment of not being affiliated with the conference. You don't have potential to rise and to fight in those last stitch games, to have a potential to win your championship in your conference because you're not affiliated with the conference.
Yeah.
Be it as it may, but
I mean, even with that, if that was even a realm of possibility, having 2 losses in this four teams system schematic that we got going on here for the final season, I mean, you're going to have crews out there that aren't going to lose this season. You got Michigan, you have Georgia, you have these teams at Washington and Oregon, right? One of those teams is going to lose and have 1 loss. One of them's not. And they're both very, very good teams. So even in this day and age, it's hard to get to the college football playoffs with any losses, okay? So, but I kind of lost where I was going with this. Yeah, I just thinking about that Ohio State game and thinking about Marcus Freeman, and when I see that clown's face, he kind of just ticks me off because I don't trust that. He just is so much hype over this Marcus Freeman, and it's spitting right back in their face. This Notre Dame team, they're going to lose Sam Hartman. They're going to lose a lot of individuals next season. They're not going to be that good.
yeah, well, they're setting themselves up, and they kind of did have a little bit of things going for them, going their way with some of the veterans they did bring back. Having Sam Hartman, the graduate transfer, come over and do what he has to do. I mean, he's your quarterback, and we mentioned, even talked about the DCP earlier, having to rebuild, and we talked about it Monday on the GCP, having to rebuild with a new quarterback. It's just very hard to do, no matter how good your recruiting class is or your recruiting guys are. It's really tough to rebuild that and to not have someone to build around and have some time to build around, with also having some positive anecdotes, positive things on your side to build off of. So losing Sam Hartman is going to be a big detriment, and they have to take advantage and make the best out of their season so they can get those 4 or 5 star recruits coming in next year, because they're going to need that depth. They might even need a couple guys just to kind of filter in there, and next year could very easily be a rebuilding year. Going into the 12-team format, CFP realm, essentially. So we'll talk about that here shortly as well. But yeah, I gotta agree. I like USC in this game. I just think their experience and their ability to fight back, even in the face of adversity, when they're looking at a loss. Essentially, they're looking at a loss right in the face, to persevere and win the game is big time. And you got to be able to do that, and you got to be able to finish games out.
Yeah, and again, with USC, Arizona's not. I mean, look, Arizona is what they are. That quarterback that's playing, Fafita, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Fafita. Yeah,
pretty solid guy, right? And I had to go look at the Arizona team because that defensive line was putting a lot of pressure on USC. And I was looking at their defensive line, and some they got transfers, right? They got guys that came from Oregon State. They got a guy that came from Michigan. They had a guy that came from Georgia. And these guys are like 6'5", 6'3", and they're big boys, right? So this Arizona team, and they got that really good wide receiver that was torching them. The Arizona team the record, yeah, but they weren't a slouch of a team. And I think with that game, it kind of was a little bit of a wake-up call for that defense, a little bit of a wake-up call. Like, hey, we better get our shit together. And they might have been looking over Arizona a little bit, but I do appreciate Arizona showing up, battling at USC, because I think it kind of helped those guys realize defensively, like, hey, look, we got to go out there and execute better. We got to wrap up. We got to tackle, especially against this Notre Dame team, because Estime's a big back. They got that tight end, number 88. He's a big boy, right? So it should be a good game. But you give me those Trojans, man. Give me them.
Yeah, you mentioned the Arizona Wildcats. You watched the first quarter of that game, that USC game. You almost wanted to turn it off right there after the first quarter, because the USC Trojans did not look good. They did not look strong. They did not look poised. To dig yourself out of that hole, and obviously they bounced back somewhat there and made it a game going into the second quarter and going into halftime. But even then, after that, kind of a lackluster performance from the Arizona Wildcats, 1 touchdown apiece for the Trojans each quarter, third and fourth. So if nothing more, this put the Arizona Wildcats on the map. It started turning some heads towards the Arizona Wildcats' way. And I just think that the USC Trojans have to finish games out to kind of ease some of the stress off of their fans and put their defense at ease, because I mean they're working their tail off, and they might not have the strongest defense, but they pull out for them.
They got a bunch of
We
athletes.
got to wait.
They got a bunch of athletes on that team. They got guys. They just need to do better tackling. They had correctable errors last game, and they were going to come to this game this week. And I think things I'm assuming they're going to be adjusted. They're going to be ready to rock and roll. And hey, you want to be undefeated and not lose to a 2-loss team, then you better show up and you better get your ducks on the line. So,
yep, we can hope they will. Moving on, Miami versus UNC, playing at Chapel Hill. UNC -3.5. Strong UNC team, but Miami, they're not without their threats. What are we looking at in this game? Another 3.5 point spread. Spreads are tight. They're tightening up. What are we looking for in this game?
Oh man, just tremendous game. Wow. If anyone saw how Miami lost last week, unbelievable. That team should not have a loss on the record, especially against Georgia Tech, and especially how that game went. I mean, Travis Van Dyke had 3 interceptions last game against Georgia Tech, and they had 5 turnovers altogether. 2 fumbles, 3 interceptions. They didn't take a knee at the end of the game, fumbled. Georgia Tech goes on, throws a 44-yarder, wins the game. So just horrifying if you're a Hurricanes fan. But for this game here, I mean, you got a motivated team. You got a team that's coming from Miami there. That's they're gnawing at the bit right now. They are ready to play. They're ready to go up to Chapel Hill. That defense, it's 9th in the nation defensively, and they're 43rd in the nation with their pass defense. And you're going up against a North Carolina team and Drake May and his weapons, who he has like 4 different wide receivers he could throw to, and then he's got this Hampton kid that is a running back, very good back. So it should be a really, really good game. And the question is, can Tyler Van Dyke display the type of quarterbacking that he did against Texas A&M earlier in the season? And does Miami have enough to slow down the sophomore Drake May and his weapons? Okay, so that's the question I'm asking myself. And kind of like the same thing with our Oregon Ducks team there. I like how the Canes can run the ball and pass the ball, right? And they're first in the nation on defense for rushing. But again, we got Bloster stats, of course. But I like the evenness of the Miami team there. I like how they're coming off a very, very tough loss. They're a very good team. They should be undefeated. They should be going in this game. Both teams should be undefeated still, right? And another game that is a deciding game for the future, of course. So here's an opportunity for Miami to erase that terrible loss of last week. Go into Chapel Hill, 7:30 game, tough environment, great UNC team, and really set themselves up for an opportunity to still make the playoffs. Barring what happens to the rest of the college teams throughout the season, right? 1 loss, no big deal, okay. But then you go to UNC and you win that game, and you do it with offense and defense, and you do it with passing and running, and hey, the ball is still in their court. I like a hungry Miami team this weekend to go to Chapel Hill to get to Drake May, and in Tyler Van Dyke, I trust.
There's a lot of strong teams in the ACC. Obviously, taking that loss at Georgia Tech does not help the Miami Hurricanes at all. But like you said, there's still a lot of games left. There's a lot of in-conference contests to still occur. So regardless what position they're at, they could be the 9th in the ACC right now, but there's a lot of potential for movement, upward movement. You get some teams to lose. Louisville might have to fall a little bit. Florida State has been relentless. And obviously North Carolina, this would be a big win to drop them down the rankings, at least conference-wise. And it'll bolster their stats moving forward in the AP polls as well. So there's a lot of hope for Miami. This is a turning point win to be for them if they do get it. So am I reading your rhetoric correctly? Are you taking the Canes here or what?
Yeah, I'll go with the Canes. I mean, it's a tough ask. It's a tough take. Drake May has Dontez Walker. He's got this Jones individual wide receiver, Paysor, 6'5", McCollum, another great wide receiver. Again, they have that Hampton running back, and I'm just looking at the Miami defense, a very hungry defense, and I like their safeties and their corners. I believe have some dogs in the secondary that may be able to turn this Drake May over. And this is a game where Miami's got to get a turnover. They got to win the turnover battle. There's gonna be a turnover in this game, and if Miami can get an interception off Drake May and turn that into points, that's just going to help them out even more, right? So,
Definitely.
I've seen what Tyler Van Dyke can do. He did it against Texas A&M, who's a pretty solid team. Texas A&M. If I can just look real quick here at their defense, where we at? Texas A&M passing defense, 22nd in the nation, right? And in the second game, Texas A&M kind of has suspect secondary, kind of like Notre Dame, but you put up 48 points, you passed for like 400 yards in that game, so it's gonna be a really tough game. It's gonna be it's gonna be really tough for Miami to win, but I'm taking them. I'm taking the Ducks. Give me the defense again. I love defense. I love a hungry defense. I like a hungry secondary, and I want an interception.
Yeah, I think an interception is needed if you want to win for the Miami Hurricanes in a hostile environment. I think it's essential almost, even if not an interception, a fumble.
I'm just taking this Georgia Tech loss, and I watched some of their interviews, some of the players, and offensively, and they talked about execution, right? Talked about execution and having to execute every step of the game, right out of the gun, right? And that's what they didn't do against Georgia Tech. They didn't execute. And so I like a good Miami team to show up to Chapel Hill, ready to execute, ready to rock and roll. They got to limit the penalties. They do penalize themselves, right? So if they can limit the penalties, get themselves a turnover, execute. This should be a really close game, and honestly, it could go either way. But I want to see a hungry Mauro Cristobal team show up to Chapel Hill and fight their asses off.
Yeah, that's the beautiful part about this type of this part of the season, especially with these spreads too. Try your hardest to push these spreads out of the way for a second, though. But these spreads have to be brought back in only because these games really could go either way. You got a 3.5 point spread. Who gives a shit? You show up to play the game of football. The team's stronger than the other team. In whatever contest you're talking about, they're going to win the game. That's been the narrative for the entire year. And for till the end of time, that's going to be the narrative. But with these tight spreads, it gives you that extra boost of confidence that anybody has a potential to win this game. Anybody can go show up, regardless of AP poll rankings, status, or rank in the conference, in this case, the ACC. And you can go in and win a football game in a hostile environment. It can happen real easy. Yeah. So limiting the turnovers and getting points on the board. So it's the name of the game.
The thing about this spread, if it was a neutral site, it would be a pick 'em. If it was at Miami would be favored. So, it's they're basing it off, of course, UNC has a tremendous offense. They can pass the ball. Drake May is, top 5 pick. Great wide receivers. I can't wait to watch this game. I want to see a hungry secondary, a hungry defensive front line, and they got to stop the run, and they got to get an interception. So.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, too, as you mentioned, if it was at a neutral site, then this would be a pick'em game. Probably all 3 of these games mentioned would be pick'em games because every team that is favored is playing at home. So how much does home team advantage, and Smitty, I think we talked about this earlier in the week, how much does a home team advantage play a role in a game? Does it play a role at all? I think it does play somewhat of a role, but I don't think that's the only aspect of a game you can look at to sway a spread in one team's direction or the other.
Well, you're looking at, like I mentioned with Notre Dame, I don't think their stadium's the loudest stadium in the country. And then you're talking about, is it indoor, is it outdoor, right? You're talking about the time of the game. How rowdy are the fans going to be? They get are they liquored up, ready to rock and roll? Are they warm and cozy, liquored up, you know what I'm saying? Or they got full tummies from lunch. So, location, time, inside, outside, it all matters. It does. But, truly, it comes down to preparation and execution. If you can handle crowd noise and you can handle, that pressure, once you start getting through the game, and of course I've never experienced it, but once you start getting through the game, second, third quarter, it starts leveling itself out, I would have to say, with the crowd noise, right? You get locked in, you're getting focused into your environment on the field, and there's only so much. It's the start of the game, and it's crunch time at the end of the game where it really gets loud. if you can take a team, if you can get ahead of a team on the road and you can take the crowd out of it, you're so much better off, right? That's obvious. So you're looking
Yeah.
at the team, you're looking at like the Ducks. Well, that's gonna be a close game, but you're looking at like USC, for example. If they can take the crowd out of it early, even with Miami, the Canes, if they can take the crowd out of that game early, get up, get an early turnover, maybe get a 2-score lead, and just battle the rest of the game. I mean, you're feeling comfortable. You're a little bit more at ease, right? You get a 10 point advantage. You know, the crowd's not as loud. You get a 14-point advantage. You're really feeling comfortable, but you're not getting complacent. So, home field advantage, of course, it's an advantage. It is. It's obvious, but I don't. It's a couple point advantages we're seeing with the spreads.
Comfortable but not complacent. Put that on a t-shirt. Let's move on. Let's talk about the 4-team college football playoff format versus the 12-team format, which all these teams, all these games, and other games that are not being mentioned tonight will play a role, because we've seen posts arise on Instagram that basically they're taking Notre Dame out of it. No conference championship to potentially win. You're looking at 2 losses. So it's not looking too good. You can easily take them out of the CFP projections right now. Next year, that might not be the case. You could be, 2-3 losses and have a chance to get in there at a 10, 11 seed. So this definitely drastically changes the landscape of playoff projections as a whole, looking at a 12-team format in 24. So I guess, how does this change things going into, obviously finishing this season out, still dealing with this season? We're in the midst of it. We're getting into the thick of it here. How does the mentality shift when you got similar standings, similar records, or maybe you got a loss or 2 under your belt, got some tough games coming up like Notre Dame does? How do you remain optimistic this season, and how does the optimism rise next season, saying let's just say everything is painted exactly how it is now? How does that shift with a 12-team format?
This, you mentioned Notre Dame, and their schedule after this game is pretty easy. They should win the last 4 games that they have, 4 or 5 games. I mean, they go on a bye week after this. They just got done with probably the toughest stretch of 4 games that you're going to see. I actually heard a stat that Notre Dame hasn't played in 4 ranked matchups like this since 2000, and that was the beginning of their season in 2000. And but you got a team like Notre Dame, right? What this 12-team CFP is going to do? It's going to breed room for error, and you have a team like Notre Dame who has USC, showing up, and again, suspect secondary in my opinion, but you win this game. You beat USC, right? You're back in the talk. Okay, yeah, USC has a pretty sloppy defense, not the best, room to work, but they have a tremendous offense, right? So if Notre Dame theoretically won this game this weekend, they would still be in the running for one of the 12, right? Teams like LSU, right, with their 2 losses, would still be in the running. It's just I appreciate the 12 teams as everyone else does, right? It's more football. It gives the teams more room for errors, right? Because we're talking about college athletes here. They're not professionals, right? You get 1 loss, you get 2 losses, and then you don't get an opportunity to play for the biggest prize of it all. Granted, these guys go to tremendous bowl games and they get tremendous, call them prizes if you want, right? They're getting all kinds of shit when they go to these bowl games. It's not like they're freaking starving out there, but they're not getting to play for what really everyone's playing for. So like I said, it's room for error, room for opportunity after a early season loss, right? Coaching errors, execution, stuff like that. So it's gonna be great for the game, and it's gonna give these teams opportunities to live after a tough loss or 2.
Definitely, I can definitely see it though too. Like you mentioned, comfortability breeding complacency. And that can easily be achieved depending on where your head's at, depending on what you're talking about in the locker room, depending on what kind of schemes you're practicing in practice during the week. So a lot of these things come into play. So it's going to be interesting to witness how that format changes the dynamic and changes the hunger factor for certain teams that have 1 or 2 losses under their belt. How comfortable do they get? I think if you have 1 or 2 losses, and kind of like it is now with the 4-team, you should be getting even more hungry than you are. You shouldn't be getting complacent and be like, oh, we can lose this game. We can fluff off this game. You shouldn't have to fluff off any game. And you see it happen time after time, or at least it looks that way. But in reality, it could be just they're getting outplayed.
I don't think any college team or any college player in a top program is going to be complacent when it comes to game in and game out. But I don't think that, for example, Sam Hartman's going to go out there this weekend and put his neck on the line like he was. If you go back and watch that Ohio State game, I mean, Sam Hartman was putting his shoulder down and trying to get the extra yard, right? I mean, character-wise, I can see Sam Hartman still doing that, but there's going to be some players out there across the board on defense and offense that aren't going to put their neck on the line for everything, right? They don't have the opportunity to win the top prize, to get the top echelon. They have a future to think about, right? So these guys, what it does right now is you got teams that are eliminated, right? They gotta have players out there. And personally, if I was a 5-star recruit, I mean, I probably wouldn't go out there and risk breaking my neck, right? Over a game that, I mean, yeah, pride and get a W, but we're talking about millions here, right? So I think what it does do is that you're going to have some complacency when it comes to, hey, do I want to take this hit? Is it really worth that extra yard? I mean, you're talking about these athletes. I heard top of the best athletes, right? Probably not many of them have this ideology or this perspective, but I'm telling you right now, there are some of them out there, right? You got guys that sit out during bowl games, and why do they do that? Because they don't want to be injured, right? So,
we see that all the time.
Yeah, it is what it is there. So,
definitely proves character and proves pride in the sport and things like that. But you got to think about big picture stuff and think about perspective and longevity and futures and things like that. So I see both sides.
Hey, it's a business decision, man. And when you get to the NFL, you see players getting traded. It's a business decision. It's all business, and that's why NILs are out there now. Name, image, likeness. It's a business, right? So
yeah.
A team that's 4-2, if I'm the quarterback, might have a future in the NFL. I'm not going to go out there and dive for 3 extra yards, right? I'm going to get my shoulder broken. I'm a senior. I have an opportunity to go to the combine this upcoming season. No, thank you. I will slide or I will run out of bounds 3 yards short.
Hey, respect. Moving on, let's get to the last segment of the night, and then this might be the most important one of the night. And Smitty, we've talked about this off the record quite a bit. It is writing the narrative. And each team, you talk about enthusiasts, you talk about fans, you talk about insiders for each team, and possibly for each of these games mentioned tonight. Writing the narrative. There's going to be 2 narratives, more likely than not, or even more. It could be more. But there's going to be 2 narratives, more likely than not, on each side, or 1 on each side, 2 total. What is the importance of writing the narrative and putting narratives out there? Because way back when, actually not too long ago, we were told or self-taught to kind of not put too much focus and too much energy into the narrative itself, at least pregame. But I guess that mentality is somewhat changed, and the dynamic has shifted in regards to the narrative itself. How has that changed, and what is the importance of looking at narratives and possibly writing narratives going into a pregame situation, and then looking back at the box score, looking back at the stat sheets after the game in the post game, and kind of saying, okay, well, this narrative played out because this happened, and this narrative didn't play out because this happened. What's the importance of writing the narrative, if at all?
Well, you write a narrative just to give some reinforcement to what you think is going to happen, right? I mean, a narrative is basically what we've been doing this whole podcast. It's just kind of thinking of the factors, the variables that the obtainable variables, statistics, right? Environment, time frame, previous game, interviews, stuff like that, right? That you can obtain, right? But then you have a narrative, right, that you can't write when it comes to injuries and turnovers. And I mean, like, I wrote a narrative hopefully that Miami can get a turnover, right? Write that narrative with their defense. But for me personally, a narrative is just a little bit of a story. It's kind of like story time. Okay, why do I think this team will do this? For what reasons? And how come? And I set up the variables, and if it's logical and it makes sense to me, I'm running with that story, and that's what I'm running with, right? But you have the uncontrollable variables that will sneak up and bite you like a poisonous snake, and then you're dead and you're on the side of the road, and sayonara, right? So, but a narrative,
Sayonara, baby. I'm
narrative is always,
gone.
narrative is always good to have, just to kind of give yourself some backbone to why you think something.
Yeah, perspective. It gives you a good idea. It helps you reinforce preconceived notions that may or may not be based on facts, statistics, etc. And then you're obviously looking at intangibles. What's the mentality? Mamba mentality. Looking at interviews, thinking about, okay, this is what the weather is, the forecast. This is how this plays a role. Home team advantage. Going into a hostile environment, taking the crowd out of it. Those are all aspects to what a narrative is built upon. So, yes, I stand behind the importance of writing a narrative, but it should never be a be all end all. It should never be a tipping of the iceberg or tipping of the scales when making a betting or wagering decision. But they can be used in the post game as confirmation either way, whether that narrative panned out to be true or panned out to be false. So, yes, there is a place for narratives, but they are to be taken with a grain of salt. Basically, you want to look at them and kind of put them to the side, and then look at them again after the game and see, oh, okay, well, that panned out. Oh, that's not really what I expected. That didn't really follow the stat sheets, against this offense or playing against this defense. So there's a lot to take away from it, but it's more there to make you feel good. It's a feel good aspect to projecting games, capping games, etc. So
I don't
there's a
think
place for it.
I don't think anyone could feel good about placing a bet in any of these games this weekend, with just how tight of a matchup they are. I mean, you got Texas A&M and Tennessee, tight matchup. UCLA and Oregon State, another really tight matchup. Missouri and Kentucky, Kansas and Oklahoma State, Florida, South Carolina, like you mentioned. I mean, there's so many games this weekend. I'm like, Jesus, you might as well just flip a coin and fuck, build your parlay from there. Maybe you'll get lucky.
Yeah. That's not a good place to be at, but yeah, I mean, looking at these games, looking at these type spreads, I mean, even Vegas is flipping a coin.
I mean, you could go ask your wife or your girlfriend, hey, which mascot do you like more? What color do you like more?
Yeah, team colors.
Holy smokes! I mean, get your puppy and print out a picture of the mascot and put 2 bowls of food, and whichever one the dog goes to, that's who you pick. Right? That's what I've done this weekend. So
yeah, it sure is. It sure is. It's a great week for football, and it's only going to get more and more like this as we continue down the stretch. So looking forward to all of it.
I'm saving my money this weekend.
Hey, smart man right here. All right, Smitty, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Any wise words of wisdom to the people out there going into this week of football? What do you got to say for them?
Yeah, comfortability breeds complacency, as we mentioned earlier. And as always, go blue, right? Big game against Indiana this weekend. I mean, holy smokes, big game.
Oh, man, that's a nail biter. I'm surprised we didn't dive into that one tonight.
And then you got the sorry-ass Spartans coming up next.
Hey, listen, we don't need to talk about my Spartans. I don't need to bring my Spartans into this, okay? We're in a rebuilding phase right now.
Holy smokes.
And that might be an understatement, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you guys are on your hands and knees every night praying for somebody, some savior of a coach.
I'm telling you, man, Urban Meyer, bring him back. He's the perfect fit. We're not going to talk about it here, but I mean, he fits in East Lansing like a glove.
Yeah.
Anyways, you can paint that narrative.
Moving on. So, what about you? What any wise words for the viewers?
Yeah, just and kind of it's the same thing every week. Take advantage of this football while it's here. Watch it, appreciate it, and don't let it pass you by because it's going to be gone before you know it. It came and went very quickly last season, as it did the season previous, and as it already is this season. We're already approaching the midpoint here, so we're on the back nine. We're on the back nine, especially for college football. NFL got a little bit more time for football watchability and appreciation, but it's fleeting. It's fleeting, so appreciate it, and it's good football to watch.
Yeah, especially this weekend for us Michiganders. Cancel your plans. It's going to be pouring all weekend for the next 4 days, so plenty of time to watch football.
Definitely. I'm actually heading up to Lewiston tomorrow, going on a golf trip with the boys. So we're gonna bring our raincoats with us and our umbrellas.
Yikes!
So we're pumped for that.
Maybe we get fortunate. Maybe it won't rain up there.
Hey, I'm doing my rain dance already. All right, we'll leave it at that. Make sure to check us out on social media. Check out our website, ginsportsnetwork.com. Check us out on IG at ginsportsnetwork and at Gin College, and find our link tree at the bottom of this podcast in the description for all of our links, and find ways to get a hold of us, reach us, etc. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for joining me and Smitty tonight on the Gin College podcast. Until next time, I'm John J. II. Have a good night.